You ready for this?
I'm so ready.
You sure? I'm going to throw in some curveball questions
You
here
know what,
for
let's just throw all the slides away. Give me fresh cut questions.
So first and foremost, who took that picture?
You know, it's, who took that picture? Well, it's about 5 years old. Those of you who get a little bit closer will recognize that right away.
He had of all the presentations we did, I think he had probably the best still shot image. But anyway, go ahead and give us a little background about DLT. I'm not sure everyone in the audience knows who DLT is, and so kind of set up, who you are and particularly what your role is in that organization.
Sure. So DLT is an IT solutions provider. What's unique about us is we actually sit in the channel and we work with some of the leading technology and software companies in the world to get their products and services into the public sector. Primarily, we're talking about the federal government, but we also include state and local and some higher education institutions in there as well. So our role is we eliminate the barriers to entry. We knock down the obstacles that prevent those companies from getting their products and services into the public sector, and we help the public sector to acquire those through easier procurement. In my role, Director of Marketing Operations, is I help manage the underlying infrastructure and tools that enable our sales and marketing teams to achieve that mission.
And roughly your team, how big is your team?
Today the total marketing department is 12 people. We're looking to nearly double that here in the next several months. So we're looking to get to about 20 to 22 is our vision for a fully staffed team.
That's great. That's great. And what is it that, and I'm going to show the slide because it's pretty intimidating. So this is what the marketplace looks like for you, which is really crowded, a lot of stuff going on, very complex. What is it, this is a hard question, what is it that makes you guys unique in this crowded marketplace?
Well, I think one of the things that it probably distinguishes us is you see us in that middle column right there, the reseller. Again, we're taking people, the manufacturers, what they're doing. We're getting all the way to the end, acquisition. We have relationships with distribution vendors. We have relationships with integration vendors. We also sit on a number of contract vehicles. That means that if you are looking to acquire if you're in the government, you're looking to make an acquisition, typically you do that on a contract vehicle. We sit on a broad spectrum of them, but then we also surround the services that we sell with additional value-added services, whether that's a software program center that gives you a full inventory of the number of people that are purchasing an Oracle access, or engineering services to help, onshore services to help manage or integrate the tool that you may have purchased.
Excellent, excellent. And so this is kind of the context, the scenario. What was the challenge that you started with before in terms of the customer experience? And what were you seeing in terms of, the data, how they were behaving, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's two kind of compelling events that are going on at the same time. DLT Solutions is over 25 years old, and at a certain point, we were no longer reflecting the cutting edge of the industry. You're working with leading brands, you're working with leading software and technology providers. We didn't look like that. We weren't reflecting that on our website. We were a little bit stodgy and a little bit stale. Engagement on the website had gone down, page sessions and session durations had gone down. And there was a compelling event. We were acquired by private equity, and so we were undergoing a brand transition. So we had this kind of moment in time to say, we're going to reposition ourselves, we're going to enhance our brand, we're going to deliver ourselves a little bit differently to the marketplace. We need to take this time to invest back into our website and turn it into a vehicle that actually creates value and draws value out of the market.
That's great. And you had a vision for what the website could become. It was something you and I talked on the phone about. You had mentioned that kind of the original version was kind of more like a snapshot in time, but you wanted to do something different with the website. Why don't you explain that to the audience?
Sure. I think it was built around a time, and we took what the market looked like at that time, and then time moved on. And so the website stayed where it was.
That,
Yeah. Websites, they don't like to move. That's right. But we wanted to make something that was a little bit more dynamic, and as opposed to being a snapshot or an image of what something looked like at a time and place, we wanted to become reflective. Reflective in a way that, based on who you were, based on your browsing activity, based on your digital body language, we would actually start to look a little bit more like what you are interested in, as opposed to one size fits all. I think this is a picture of several of us this morning after the party last night, staring in the mirror, wondering what happened.
Yeah, I mean, what if we caught a vision like that for our own websites? Our websites would, be more reflective of the customer in action and moment. I think it's an awesome idea, an awesome concept. You started to tackle that and try to make that shift through some content hubs, some account-based content hubs. you explain that a little bit for the audience?
Sure. So one of the things that we invested in as part of investing in the overall corporate website, we also invested in tools and resources to help deliver specialized content hubs around specific products and solutions tailored for specific sectors of the market that we worked with. So that if you were somebody who we thought was interested in an Oracle product, for example, and were coming from a federal DoD IP address or email domain or returning to us from one of those campaigns targeted towards that sector, the content that you were going to be seen, you're going to be shown, was going to be reflective of that. It was curated around those areas of interest and those solutions. And we actually put you into this content hub so that you stayed in that store. Once you're in that store, you stayed there and integrated with that content so that we owned that conversation with you, but we were delivering something of value at the same time.
Yeah, and you had something you called interest-based content. Explain that.
So, we had a couple different areas that we looked at. We work with, something like 30 plus different manufacturers who have solutions and products that cover the spectrum of levels of interest or problems or pain points. What we looked at was your browsing history, your page visits, the campaigns you interacted with, the events you kind of came to, and we began to build a persona around what are your levels of interest. And then we created these very dynamic, flexible content hubs that had all of that information behind the scenes, but only brought forward, based on your visit, the content that seemed to best fit. Now, you could navigate to all other areas of the content as well if we got that wrong, but our first effort was to give you our best bet at what we thought your level of interest was going to be around.
What was the difference between the interest-based content that your website was serving up and, say, the account-based content that your site was, giving to the visitors?
Well, so in terms of account-based, we would target very specifically into certain agencies that are part of our top of our pipeline. When we're talking about like the Air Force, for example, we want our website to look like an Air Force solution, something that's specific to them. We work across all sorts of different sectors, so anybody at any given time visiting the website could be a chancellor at a public institution or could be a colonel in the Air Force. We want that visit at that time to look like what you are in the marketplace relative to that. So that's more of the account-based side.
That's good. Now, I bet many in the audience are, well, let me ask you this. And I didn't ask you this before, so here's your curveball. So in terms of the amount of content from the previous experience, just overall content, to the amount of content you're having to create in this new customer experience, what was the difference? I mean, how much more content was having to create these experiences?
I mean, that was part of the beauty of it, is we have such great relationships with these vendors, these manufacturers. They have a vested interest in us being good at our jobs, because the better we are at our jobs, the more money we make for them. So they actually deliver to us a lot of the content that they want to be promoted. Our role is to help make sure it has the right voice and look and feel for the customer, because that's where we own the conversation, where our expertise comes to play, the public sector. We didn't actually have to create a whole lot. The difference was, and this was part of the challenge of the older website, was that we all have the advantage of, everybody in this room has written an email or piece of copy or an ad campaign that they've handed to somebody else to edit or mark up or give feedback on, and you've been embarrassed when they've said, "What are you talking about? I don't understand. This message isn't resonating. I think you've missed the mark." We're all guilty of that of some example, but when we developed the website, the original website, the older version of it, and we're looking at it, and we're having a hard time finding the content that matches what we're looking for, and we have the advantage of having been the original creators, if it's not working for us, there's no way it works for the end customer. Yeah. The difference is we took all of that content and we mapped it to the different buyer personas or the profile that we knew about the people visiting the website, leveraged some personalization tools, and now we're bringing that content back out of the shadows to the forefront and getting a better insight into what works, what doesn't, and where our gaps are in our content strategy. And so
I think this may be a bit of an encouraging point. It wasn't necessarily that you had to go out and just create a bunch of new content. It was more about just using it and leveraging it more intelligently.
That's right.
That's huge. So one of the things that we want to do, and it's a few slides, we wanted to kind of walk you through, if you were the customer, the experience that you would have, going through this. If you came to the site from like an ad to the page to the entire process, and a couple of the experiences. You want to just kind of guide them through that?
Sure. So I think the experience you're seeing on the screen here leverages one of our account-based marketing tactics. During the month of September is when the United States federal government has their federal fiscal year end, the use it or lose it period, and they do not like to lose it, so they will use it. So our objective was to be front and center on those places where they're browsing, looking for information, but also thinking about, I have expiring budget dollars and limited amount of time left to spend them. So using the account-based targeting strategy, we would promote the ads, bringing them into the website. The website would actually change dynamically based on your profile. So here, one of the headline messages is, your federal fiscal year end made easy. Our underlying value proposition is IT procurement made easy. We leverage that as part of the messaging for the campaign. And that would pull them into the website where they could immediately speak to an expert, request a quote. If they were already in the pipeline and we knew that based on their contact information within our database, we'd actually present them with a card that had their sales rep information that's already aligned to them so they could get to that person right away.
What kind of things would change based on some sort of data that let you know that this was a different prospect type? What kind of things would change about the site to create that custom flow?
The hero image at the top of the screen would change based on your profile. So here we have an example of something that's the exact same website, except we know that you're a member of the Air Force coming to our website, either because you're an active contact in our database or our IP address library is mapped to an Air Force domain. So we knew that about you, and the promoted content in the carousel is also featuring imagery and content that's specific to the Air Force. Likely, some sort of weapon acquisition project.
That's good. And so you can see clearly what they're doing here is they're creating a very custom experience based on where they're coming in from. What about the CTAs? How did you adjust those to match the customer set?
Yeah, so it depends on where, if we know where you are in our pipeline and what type of product you're looking for, solution you're in the pipeline for, we're going to suggest getting you in touch with the expert on our staff that's most of a match for your area of need. So here you see a couple calls of action where we have business application specialists standing by ready to assist you to understand more about the solutions we can provide. That's based on your browsing activity. That'll get promoted. On the other side of the screen, we see our cybersecurity specialists, where we have subject matter experts on staff. Based on where you are in the pipeline, based on your browsing history, we can probably make an intelligent guess that you're looking for a solution that's a cybersecurity space. Let's eliminate the obstacle to getting you in front of the right sales rep and have them be front and center by allowing you to click and speak to an expert.
That's good. And so once they click this, the personalized experience kept on going.
That's
kept
right.
on going. So walk us through that.
So, depending on exactly where they were, we had a couple different branches on that call to action. One would be to fill out a form, and you would be pushed into a pipeline to be followed up by an expert. In some cases, you would be introduced to a live chat feature. So somebody that was sitting with fingers on the keyboard ready to have an interaction with you, do some pre-qualification, and get you into the correct sales division for follow-up or engagement.
That's good. Now, so that kind of paints a picture of the experience. Now let's go underneath the surface here for a minute. So obviously a lot of data is being factored into this, creating these custom experiences. Can you walk us through the role that data played in all this, and what kind of data that you guys used, and how you decided to use it, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, without doing first a deep analysis and coming to Jesus moment with our own data about what was true and what was not true, we wouldn't have been capable of doing the right message at the right time. So we did a lot of regression and tracking of just our database itself in terms of what was the mix in terms of new contacts being added, contacts being updated or refreshed, contacts going stale. What was the average tenure? How often did we have to refresh the database? And then we began mapping that against the different key sectors that we cared about in terms of net new contacts being added into those sectors. So we knew what our available addressable market was in terms of prioritizing our ad spend, prioritizing our content creation or curation, and also prioritization of different nurture programs. And then we mapped folks into different tiers in terms of how much information we knew about you. If all we knew about you was your email address, it's better than nothing, but if all we knew about you was email address, we called you unprofiled. We didn't really know enough about you to do a good job. But as we add more fields of information, we get you to complete. And part of the goal of actually using the website to clean our data so that as people continue to visit the website, they would actually give us a little bit more information. We move them from the left side to the right side on that spectrum.
That's great. That's great. What was the biggest challenge that you faced in doing this across the board?
I think the biggest challenge, we had some leg ups on this. We were going through a rebranding exercise. Yep. We were being acquired to an investment of capital to help improve our marketing services. The biggest challenge was getting our arms around all the data and making some choices and placing some bets. And I think the first step we took was understanding where we were. It's like, I think there was a little bit resistance to actually getting into the data and just being honest about how good or how bad or incomplete it was. It's like the bill that shows up that you don't want to open. Like, I already know the bad news. Don't make me actually open it. But once you open it and you address it, it becomes manageable and you have a game plan.
That's great. That's great. In terms of the impact of these changes, have you been able to see anything in terms of the numbers and the results that would indicate that this is actually working with the customer's responding positively to this?
Yeah, a few things. One, average page session went up significantly. Number of page visits went up significantly after we did a better job of promoting the right content upon first visit. But we also saw that conversions went up 42%. Now, our website is not really a point of sale transaction. It's about getting you into the right solution area for a longer engagement. That being said, some people come to the website because they're looking for a quote because they want to close business today, especially during that fiscal year end. Every single time somebody did that, every one of those website conversions on average was worth $50,000. Wow. After this, that conversion rate went up 42%. It was real money in the bank.
Wow, that's excellent. That's excellent. So let's just say that you kind of take yourself back to the beginning, and this going to seem a little bit complicated. So if someone in the audience is wanting to start something like this, get their website, with the microsites and the custom flows, where would you tell them to start? Where would you encourage them to kind of start first?
Yeah, first things first is you got to know where you stand. You got to benchmark your data. You have to understand the profiles, the number of contacts you have in your database, mapping them to different sectors, different domains, companies, having an honest audit or account of what those people are and how quickly or how slowly you're growing that database and how fastly it's churning out from beneath you, because contacts go bad over time, just like anything else. So understanding where that is first.
Do you remember anything that was kind of surprising to you when you guys were going through the benchmarking process?
Yeah, I think one of the key challenges that we found was that in the public sector, things churn a little bit slower, but on average, an email address went invalid every 33 months, which means that if we stopped working on improving our database and stopped adding contacts, we would have 0 people to email to in under 3 years.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. So it's encouraging because then you can go to the bosses and be like, here's what will happen if we don't act right now.
Great. I love the honesty of that, though. Like getting honest. Don't get out of that delusion of, oh, we're all great. Look at the data and actually benchmark it. That's good. What would you do next?
You can't do it alone. Internally or externally, you have to identify the right partners to help make you successful. Sales buy-in is critical. You don't have a campaign unless sales knows what to do with it at the end of the day. And having them be on the front end invested in marching into the same door with you arm in arm and saying this is how we're going to go forward, that will help speed up and add velocity to your success. And then for us, it was not having the internal expertise on that personalization. Yep. So we found an external partner, Triblio, who actually is an expert in this area and helped us do that for our website and for those content hubs.
Good. What else?
Starting small. You can't get to the last step unless you take the first step. And it's so easy to get discouraged when you look at all of the things that you could be doing and you don't know where to start. And the trick is, where do you start? And the answer is you just start. You pick one thing. You pick one thing, and you're going to make progress against that, whether it's benchmarking your data or if it's just doing some sort of tracking against what your average page duration is. Once you know that, then you have information that you can react to, and then you're started. The next step becomes a little bit more self-evident.
That's great. Last one?
Test. You're not a marketer unless you're testing. So A/B test, ABC test, 1, 2, 3 test. I don't know any other numbers or letters off the top of my head, but test, because the second you think you have it right, that's when you should know that you've done something wrong.
We can go alpha, beta, gamma.
That's right.
That's right. So this is an awesome case study. I just commend you for just using the data to really create a personalized, better experience for the customer. And I'm glad, it's awesome how it even shows up in the results. So well done. Well done. We wanted to save some time at the end for some questions. I know there was a lot we were going over in this. We got a little deep in some of the data stuff. So we have a mic running around. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and we'll do that. And if you have, and if you raise your hand and the mic isn't on, you keep your hand up. So we'll get the mic to you. We'll go over there first. And I think we have a time for a few questions, if you like. So,
Hi, Tom. I think you mentioned Triblio?
Triblio, yeah.
Did you use anyone else in the tech stack for doing the identification? I know, like demand-based and...
Yeah, so we're actually in conversations with other partners as well to help augment our existing stack, but our underlying platform is Eloqua, which is what we're using to help automate and manage the contacts within the database and do the profiling. We couple that with a proprietary CRM that is purpose-built for our market, and then bolted on Triblio, using that integration with Eloqua to make sure that content that's related to the segments that we built up with our marketing pipeline and our nurturing tracks is driving what the content will be on the website as well.
that's good. That's good. Yep, over here. If you want to have some more questions, feel free to raise your hand.
I have a quick question. About a couple slides ago, you showed the banner ad that was going to the custom. It looked like it was going to the home page, where I then had to click to go to a landing page, and I'm wondering why you chose that path as opposed to just skipping that step and going straight to a landing page.
I think that specific step may have been that you may have been an unknown contact in that you were matched based on an IP address, but we didn't know your name or your email address. And so I think the first call to action would be to bring them to the home page, and then based on their browsing history, what solution area they were looking for, that's when we would promote a tile that would bring them into the right sales division for follow-up.
Good. Well, guys, Tom will be here at the end if you have any other questions you want to ask him. But just, join me in just thanking him for this great case study. Thank you so much, man.